Hi, welcome back to Soul Talk. This is Dr. Stephanie with Jessica Hinder, and we are here each week and we talk about those conversations that you don't typically have with your everyday girlfriends or your family. These are where raw conversations happen, and we like to share the things that we're passionate about and we love. And so each week we'll pick a topic that we're interested in and share it with you. Dr. Stephanie, and I am a mind body coach and also an acupuncturist and a founder of the Soul Wise Method. And here with me is my wonderful friend and colleague, Jessica Hinderer, and she is a master Reiki. She's a double master
But
and entrepreneur. And each week we come together to share our thoughts and our opinions, and that you enjoy these weekly chats that we have. So today we've just been building on, we were just talking, Jessica and I are talking like, what are we actually creating here? And creating is, we're starting to create the foundation for people. So whether you are like along the journey, spiritual awakening and your consciousness and development of that, or you're just beginning, there's a place for all of us here. And so we thought that we'd actually go back to the very basics. And we were talking about how did we even get started in this? And I was sharing, like, it's so second nature to me, energy and intuition, and it's the lens and the paradigm through which I've lived my entire life, I feel like. And so it's hard in certain ways for me to remember, like, when did it all begin? So I'm going to pose that question to you, Jessica. Like, do you remember, like, when? I know we've shared, like, in some other episodes, like, little tidbits here and there of our experiences, but, like, do you remember, like, when it kind of clicked for you, that evolution looked like for you as part of your journey?
thanks, Stephanie. That's a question. Gosh, the every year that you live, you learn so much more, right? To think back, I was always our energy being. So we are always somewhat tapped in the field around us. So it's really more the awareness in the body is the way that if I were to say that I had any of the clairs, I would say that I was certainly clairsentient, that you get information through your physical body. Say probably one of the biggest moments was when I was in a relationship for about 4 years. It was a very tumultuous relationship, and I knew that I had to get out of it. And I did get out of it, but then I'm in this limbo space in my, mid 20s of like, what the heck am I supposed to do now? Right. Like I was living with him and I moved out back into my parents' house and just kind of trying to recollect myself and always felt the country of Thailand calling my heart. I wasn't, I'd been there when I was a baby, maybe when I was 3 years old with my parents, have big memories of that. Do a quick volunteer experience in China, my 20s. And that was for 2 months. Well, we had one vacation and I flew to Thailand, and it was my very first solo trip by myself. I didn't go with friends or anything. But when I got there, it was this very interesting full body, like calm, like recognition. Like the way I can say it is like, is you, as soon as you step off that airplane in Bangkok and you smell that not great, but like certain very specific type of air, it just hit my body and was like, home. Like that was the word that just came to my from my heart out into my brain, was just like, I'm home. And so even though that was like a quick little week from the China experience, I moved back to the States and, was deciding what I needed to do. It was like, I need to find a way. I remember sitting on the beach there and saying, I'm going to find a way to get back here. And I'm going to find a way to get back here, like, for a longer period of time. So we talk about, about it in the realm of energy, have these like what I like to call, green light, red light theory. So, there's a lot of things that we might want to do in our lives where we're like, perfect example. I actually, to bring it back to this, was this green light, red light. College, I had always dreamed of joining the Peace Corps. My father is a former Peace Corps, and it was always something like, yes, this is what I want to do. Like, I really want to be able to go and help fortunate people, really less fortunate. They just have less development. They're actually way more fortunate in their hearts. Let's just go ahead and say that. But I remember applying and I kept getting mail back that was like, okay, now you need to send this, get this doctor's report, and you need to send this, and you need to get these tests, and you need to, all these things that kept coming back. I ended up spending probably over $1,000 on these, medical tests that were necessary. And I got, after this $1,000 that I had spent of my own money, mom and dad were like, nope, this is a you thing. So back another letter of like, hey, we need something about the dental something teeth situation. And I saw, like, I got a quote and it was like, I don't know, $700. And I just said, this is a big red light. Like, I don't know what's going on here, but like, this is not a clear path. So, this is enough money. Clearly, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I'm making the movements forward, right? Like, I always know about if you're on the right path, your guides, your team, everything around you, and the field of energy will help move you along, just like a river. So, that was something clicked in my head and was like, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep spending a ton of money just to go to a place that I may not even know that I'm going to be comfortable at. So I'd squash that. And then with this Thailand thing, had this whole thing of being, I was scared. Like, there was a big unknown. There's the fear of unknown, being not knowing where you're going to be put, how you're going to make money. You're going to a completely foreign country. You don't speak the language, all the things, right? This is all the fears that are coming up, coming up, coming up. So what did that do for me? Well, that delayed me. I kept pushing it back. Oh, I'll look at tickets, tomorrow. Look at tickets tomorrow. One day, my mom, it was like maybe 2 months of living in their home. And my mom was like, that girl ain't going to Thailand. She's not going. No, she hasn't even got her ticket. She doesn't even know what she's doing. And I was sitting in the back of the car coming back from some family party. And I was like, oh, challenge accepted. And it was this beautiful moment of like, I remember feeling like the heat through my body when she said she's not going. I don't believe her. It was this whole reaction to probably childhood of like, okay, this is a challenge from mom, which means I'm definitely going to have to follow through. That night, I think I bought my ticket at like midnight because I was like, nope, I am going. I'll show you. Right. So it's a bit of the against your parents, right? You want to prove them wrong. But I remember viscerally the whole feeling of this, like what I call chills, prickly skin, but warmth, this excitement, this like, even though I don't know what I'm going to be doing, like it feels right. It was a green light, right? I bought the ticket, I got the thing, I got the job, and everything just opened up. And I think I bought the ticket in, say, November. By April 11th, I was on that airplane and I was flying over by myself with no one. I knew no one. And I was like, well, here I go. And that moment, like, when I landed in Thailand, it was like green light after green light after green light. Everything flowed so incredibly beautiful. Like, I'm getting chills thinking about it because like it was so clear in my body and in the outside world was reflecting back to me that I was exactly where I needed to be. So that would be, I would say, the very first time when I was really like, what's going on inside my body and on my skin? That is information. That's a message. So pay attention. Yeah.
It's so important to like you paying attention and noticing what the body sensations are because I say that so often we're taught to override those. So I'm going to give an example from Chinese medicine. So in Chinese medicine, there is theory, principle that when your stomach is full, your bowels cannot be full at the same time. And if you really pay attention, you'll notice like if you're really full and your bowels are full, like you're like, oh, this feels miserable. Okay. So, and there are some people you'll observe that they take a bite, they'll have to immediately go to the bathroom because they need
Mm.
to clear out their bowels before they eat. So I remember my younger daughter, and I knew this principal, my younger daughter was at the table, and lo and behold, every single time she would sit at the table, she would take a bite, and then she was like, I have to go to the bathroom. And I know before I learned this, I would have been like, would you stop? Like, you're just delaying it. Like, what are you doing? Because how often do our parents, when we're young, tell us something isn't true and to disconnect from our bodies and to not to pay attention? And so instead, I
Mhm.
said, okay, go ahead and go. She's like, okay. And then every time she would have a bowel movement, she would come back and then she'd be able to eat her dinner. So she was paying attention and listening to her cues. But as a parent, I also needed to acknowledge her and not to dismiss what she was experiencing within her body. So that's a great example. And it's something that as adults you can begin to practice. Like notice, like when you haven't had a bowel movement, how do you feel? And
Yeah.
if you're going to take a bite to eat, do you feel more sluggish and tired because your bowels haven't cleared out? So you can't have both of them at the same time. So that's a,
Mm.
like I'm going to say, I want to say an easy way. We get older, we've constantly overridden that natural way of being and disconnected between it, but use it as an exercise to practice and begin to get in touch with your body. And then the other one that I is, so I remember as a very young child being able to communicate with spirits and playing with the fairies in our backyard and spirits, and they were my friends. And I do remember older a very distinct moment. I was in third grade, and my great grandmother was still alive at the time, and she later in life in her 80s had developed cataracts that had blindness. So this is before they do all the cataract surgery that they do now and test you for. And it was at a point that that wasn't available in the late 70s. So anyway, she would with various 12 children, and she would either stay for a month with one family or a grandchild. And so my mom was her grandchild, and she had stayed with us previously, and she just recently moved over to my grandmother's house to stay. And I remember it was the middle of the night, and I all of a sudden woke up with a bolt. And I loved my grandmother, Mary. We called her Carter, but her name was Mary Carter. And she used to tell me stories about railroad in Western Maryland and how our family was part of the Underground Railroad. And we would help folks to cross over the Mason-Dixon line. And she born, late 1890s, but she shared that that was something that our family had done. And those were the stories that she would share. And I just loved hearing them. It taught me so much about paying attention. And she also taught me, because she couldn't see, because she was blind to the cataracts, she would say, tell me the colors that you see. Describe the colors, describe the vibrancy of it, and describe to me what you see in nature. And so she really taught me from a very young age observation and how to observe and pay attention to my surroundings, color, sound, odor, and what I was witnessing. So, anyway, this night I wake up, it's about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I wake up, and right there is my grandmother's spirit. And she comes and she says, I just wanted to come and let you know that I am leaving now, but I will always be with you. But my time here is done. And now, and I love you, and I will always look out for you. And I wasn't afraid. I was just like, oh, okay, that sounds good. Okay. So I wake up, it's like 7 o'clock, 7:15 in the morning. It's a January day. It's overcast that day. And I remember standing in our dining room, and I opened up the curtains, and I'm just staring at a window. And my mom said, go get ready for school. And I said, no, grandma died last night. She's like, Stephanie, stop. She did not die. I would know if that happened. And I said, well, I'm going to call here at 7:30. And I was
Mhm.
eating. And she's like, Stephanie, just go get dressed, grinding teeth. And so lo and behold, the phone rings. It's my grandmother. She said, I just want to let you know, grandma passed away last night around 3 o'clock in the morning. And my mom
Wow.
was like, what? And,
Wow.
and she's like, well, okay. Okay, you were right. But I learned very early on to trust those images and
Mhm.
the messages. So all the clairs, for one, I forget which one it is, but I don't have one of them. But like if I touch somebody, I can feel where their pain is. I can smell things. I can taste. I'm around certain things. I can taste things. That's the one that's not as strong. But anyway, definitely the clear audio and the visual stuff I often see and get. And so part of it is, I learned early on because I had not that my grandmother that I was aware of those clairs, I'm sure she did, but because she taught me to pay attention, I grew up being very observant. And
Mhm.
and so that's one of the things. I went to acupuncture school. The things that we had to learn from the very first semester is every day we had a little notebook and we had to go outside in nature and we had to write for 30 minutes what we observed in nature. And when we first started, I thought it was ridiculous. But again, it was about getting us into observation because through observation, we learn that we can begin to observe our body. So when we begin to learn that we can observe the exterior, we can begin to observe what we're noticing within our bodies. So, what does this mean for energy? What does this mean for intuition? So, it starts with doing these practices because without doing that, it's like building up a muscle. Like when we go to the gym and we're lifting weights, right? Like we're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get my muscle, okay? But it doesn't happen overnight, right? The first couple
Mhm.
weeks, you're like, oh my gosh, my muscles hurt. I'm so sore. I never ever want to do that again. Oh my God, I'm in so much pain, right? It's kind of similar when you're building up your energetic muscle and your intuition. You've got to start somewhere. So that's part of why we're sharing this is it is a process to get there. And no, you'll see, well, you know all of this and how can I do this? I don't know how. And so this is a roadmap for you to be able to pay attention. So Jessica shared like what she really noticed in her body. And so I'm sharing like, yeah, you can notice all of that in your body. However, if you often can also begin to look outside and notice externally, okay? And then slowly, then you can begin to say, oh, wait, when I see that owl in the random tree that I never see, what do I experience in my body? Do I go, do I start? Do I go, oh, and I feel a sense of calm? Notice that because those are all clues that begin to help you learn to tap in to the energetic nature and the energetic exchange that is happening every moment and every day at every time that we as a society, and usually unfortunately our parents, have told us to turn off. Oh, stop doing that. Oh, what are you talking about? You like, and so we're unbreaking these learned habits, these learned patterns, these learned shutdowns that someone went and just put the lid on top of us and just squashed whatever that experience was. And so often, so many of these things started when we were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? So
Mhm.
we got to undo it and we got to open it back up. Okay.
Right.
So,
Hmm.
anyway, I hope
And
those
I,
are two stories that give you different perspectives that you can take and maybe grow from that.
yeah, and to piggyback on what you were saying, because that's what was popping in my mind too, was like the whole thing of like being shut down as children brought me to the space of how often I, as a growing, teenager and getting older away from childhood, farther away from childhood, that I recognize now looking back how often I would perceive information through my body and I would then, shut it down like you said. What I've then when I'm coming back to being like, no, let me open that space back up. I have It's easier now, but it was a big, big challenge for me at the beginning was recognizing the difference between anxiety and excitement. A thin line. Like, for example, when I feel excitement, it's like, it buzzes here in my heart space. But when I'm feeling anxious, it buzzes in my solar plexus. So it's like this very close space between the two. And it's only through my practice of feeling and checking in and what is this? Okay, I feel the buzz. What is that? Is that anxiety or is that excitement? And another way to put that too, as far as your day-to-day observation is that first of all, we have to be incredibly gentle with ourselves. We have to be like that, like, there is no point for this. It's only for your own personal growth, curiosity, and wanting to know more. Is always keeping in mind that throughout this world, throughout our bodies, and throughout the universe, we are constantly expanding and contracting. So, this is a huge part. I mean, how do you get born, right? What do they call those? Contractions, right? So, it's this expansion and contraction. And that's also that buzzing, the thin line between, do I feel expanded now? Is that what that feeling is? Or do I feel like, oh crap, like this isn't good? Those are such simple, simple tips to just pop into if you feel like it, right? Again,
And
that's
I
on
think what
you.
you just said about the whole contraction, what just popped in it, and I never thought about it until you just said that, is I think about like as we are stepping more into like our world is evolving and our consciousness is rising and we're expanding as humans and our capacity to understand. And I'm seeing so many more people want to know about energy and vibration and what is this intuition, people that never even thought about it or considered it, and they're like, I don't understand it, I don't know what to make of it, but I'm feeling so drawn to it and I'm feeling anxious about it and not knowing. And so that they kind of contract, and I think, oh, isn't that actually such a beautiful analogy that when you go through the birth canal you contract before you expand. So that's the other thing to think about as you go through this and you're learning, you might pull in more and contract. And it's not a bad thing to contract. It's not a bad thing to come back in. It can
Yep.
mean that, oh, you're on the right path. It's that you need to pull your energy in to conserve it while you're integrating, right?
Yeah.
So if we're constantly expanding, that means our energy is going out. Like it's right. So sometimes we got to pull it back in, conserve it, integrate,
Mhm.
refresh, reset, expand out, contract again.
Mhm.
So those are like beautiful ways to just to consider like what does it all mean out there, right? So I want to share one other story. So recently, a new butterfly picture up here because
Yeah.
I recently moved. On my bingo card that I was going to be moving this year or in the past month, it was not even a blip on my radar. I thought that I was going to be moving next year at this time. Some circumstances changed, and I was given a deadline of either school started in September or I was like, I am not moving in December. Who wants to do that? That sounds miserable and cold. And I also was decided I did not want to spend my whole summer looking and researching for a place to buy or a place to rent. And my husband and I, we rent and we're looking to purchase, but we're not quite ready yet. So I said, okay, we're just going to take off the table buying something. We're just going to look for something to rent. And so once my husband told me, like, hey, by the way, things have changed. And he told me, like, immediately I was like, okay. And everything began to fall into place. And once
Mhm.
everything began to fall into place, I knew it was the right time and the right moment for us to move. No, actually, next year, my timeline, my plan, I had to let that all go. I had to just
Mhm.
drop the planning, right? Because the
Mhm.
universe said, no, this moment actually is when you need to move. And this moment, we're going to make sure everything flows. There were no hiccups, no problems. We found a great new home and a fabulous community. And it happens to be just a couple minutes from my dear Jessica. We're literally neighbors now.
Yes.
25 minutes apart before, but we're like neighbors in the same
Mm.
community now. It wasn't planned. It just so happened that the place we found was here.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the other thing to remember is that when you are in the flow and the energy is right, then things shared when she went to Thailand. Like she was trying to go to the Peace Corps. It wasn't working
Mhm.
out for her. All fell into place within literally 4 weeks. Found
Mhm.
a place, got it, got movers, got everything moved in. And on that, when I decided to become an acupuncture, I had a very similar story to Jessica. There were my two passions in life. I either wanted to be an attorney, and I, younger, even thought I would consider becoming the president of the U.S. But then my vanity kicked in when I was in college. And I was like, they age too much. I don't want to do that. That's too much responsibility. They don't look so good when they're done. Anyway, so my two passions were I wanted to be a neurosurgeon or I wanted to be a lawyer. So I ended up all through high school and through college, I either worked in like a legal profession way or I worked for a hospital or I worked for, and so I kept both passions up. And so I graduated college, thought I was going to go to the law school, got a panic attack before the LSAT, so never took it, freaked out, was like, oh my God, I can't do it. Did some public policy for several years and then decided, you know what? Actually, medicine is where I wanted to be. So I kept trying to take the MCAT and apply to medical school. And every time I did, I got diverted. Like it was like, whoop, over here. And I literally would be like, a piece of paper would show up and be like, hey, acupuncture. And a business card would fall in front of me. A newspaper would like fly through the air and hit me in the face.
Uh-huh.
Acupuncture, acupuncture. I was like, yeah, whatever. I'm not going to do that. Like, woo shit. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I had a car accident. It was my third car accident. It was a fender bender, but this fender bender rendered it so that I couldn't walk. And the only thing that helped me after a year of therapy and during a chiropractor, and after the orthopedist suggested surgery, suggested I do acupuncture. And I was like, what the hell? Oh, they're doing. So I did it. And after that, I was like, I don't know how I'm better, but I can walk, I can function, I'm happier. I don't know how this works, but I want to do this. And once I made that decision, all the roadblocks I had trying to go to medical school didn't matter. Everything fell into place. Everything
Mm.
just, and there was no roadblocks, and it all just worked out. So, why are we sharing like these experiences and stories? Because so much we think that energy isn't connected there, in that energy is something outside of us. We think of it, I don't know. When I talk to people, it's like, I don't understand it. I don't understand the concept. So, these are
Well, like
things,
electricity, right? You
right? Yeah,
turn
we
on the
think of it like
light, it goes on.
electricity, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
And
car moves. Yeah,
right, but we think
exactly.
about like how does your life flow? Is it flowing?
Mhm.
Is it not flowing? So that's an
Closed
energy,
circuit, open circuit, you
right?
know? Like,
Yeah. So all of these are examples of how energy through our lives,
Mhm.
when it's in balance and when it's in alignment.
That's right. That's right. It's absolutely so. And it really is just up to the person individually, like because I know that in in learning these building blocks, like there's so much work that needs to be done with self when we are in that where we started like in that like I don't even know. I can say like in that sickness, right? Because you feel so lost, you feel so alone because you're literally giving all of your energy out. And I know especially as women, we're giving our energy out. We're doing things for people. We don't want to disappoint anyone even though I have nothing left. Giving it all to the family, like I'm still going to show up because my girlfriend invited me, here or there and I know I need it. But and sometimes that does work out. Sometimes that actually gives you the energy back, right? But a lot of the times, at least in my personal experience, I recognize that, like, I'm giving all this energy out to my friends as well as my family. And I don't feel like I'm getting it back. Like I'm not getting my cup refilled. And I think that's really where that whole journey started because I kept giving. And then what happens when you have nothing left is your cup is replaced. Well, I mean, it's filled up with anger and resentment and blame and shame and all of that negative stuff that you're essentially just drinking, right? And God, that leaves, I mean, why? Like, can we just not do that? And that was like the come to Jesus moment for me. I was like, I can't keep doing this. I am so incredibly miserable. I know my marriage is going to fall apart. I know my mental health is already falling apart. Like all the stuff that was the things that I found and put on the most important list were turning into like most like worst enemy list, and that's why we're doing this again because we want you to know like I have so been there so viscerally, so, it makes me nauseous when I think about how far I let myself get before I recognize, like, oh crap. And that whole thing, we've got energy, 100% is always here. It's never created or destroyed, like we discussed last time. The manifestation of stuff, right? Like the how things come to us. And we have our own personal, like our own. How we don't look at ourselves, the self love, very simply put, how we don't give that love, the self, like the rest, the self care, like all the things that we are worthy of giving ourselves the very best that we give to everybody else, and we're empty and nobody's giving it back. This is the great renewable source. You give it to yourself, it continues, and then you have energy to give out to others, right? So, like, I would just have to say, like, don't make yourself sick over it. Like, there's an opportunity. And the more that we can learn to love ourselves unconditionally, and this is not the easy one. This is probably the hardest thing that we can do. This is where we can then really we can change those patterns that we have not been able to change. We can release the stuff that we've been holding on to that never belonged to us. And that all starts with recognizing energy and learning to love ourselves unconditionally. So that's what I
It's
would.
learning, what it like really paying attention to our bodies and noticing,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
And it starts there. So, today we've given you some examples from our own lives about how we've gotten into the flow. We've given you some examples of how to notice in your body, but then also externally, because I think it's both, right? And sometimes I find working with my clients, sometimes it's harder to really begin to notice internally what's going on and what it means. So sometimes beginning that external observation then trains the muscle then to be able to be a better observer of oneself. Like we can say as women, like, I'm so depleted all the time, I'm so tired, blah, right? Forget, like, what is that associated with? Like I had a client of mine who was in a long-term mate for like 10 years and had joint pain and physical pain, and she had acne. So in Chinese medicine, a cystic, like, boil type acne, or anything that is erupting on the skin, I always tell people it's like explosions, right? Like, just think of it like it's exploding, right? So it's repressed anger, resentment, something that isn't being expressed needs to be expressed. Anyway, unfortunately for this client, her husband took his life.
mm,
And um, so I'm going to say, unfortunately for him, he did. But fortunately for her, what she has observed since then, she's like, oh my gosh, I am happier.
mm.
My acne has gone away. She's dropped 40 some pounds. She's like, I
Wow.
feel lighter than I have in years. And she
Mhm,
goes, I didn't realize how much I was absorbing and not protecting myself from all the things. And she learned after the fact a whole secret life that was going on. And she was like, something was always off, but I always thought it was me. And I was, but she's like, but I didn't think about, like, what is it in relationship to other people? So why do I bring this up? Because sometimes we're in toxic environments,
mhm,
experiences, toxic families, toxic relationships, friendships, neighborhoods that are blocking us from being in the natural flow of our lives. And sometimes we need to make big shifts. And so sometimes as we begin to get more in touch with ourselves, we begin to notice that things feel more and more uncomfortable, to the point where you want to, like, kind of explode and, like, just let it go, because it's not in resonance. It's not aligned anymore. So you have to move either out of that environment, change that situation, change that job, I don't know, change the car, change the haircut. I don't know. It's just something isn't flowing. So we got to
change your
create that
thought.
shift, change the thoughts in our brains. And so for her, she kept thinking, in this case, it was something that she was doing, okay? But
Mhm,
she couldn't pinpoint it, but she was paying attention, but not enough that she was aware that the issue was actually an external factor that there wasn't a resonance with her unfortunate now deceased husband, that was creating the imbalance within her. So there are things that like that will happen for us. And so part of it is, so why do I bring it up? We're not going to change sometimes the environment around us.
Mm-mm.
Sometimes we can't. Sometimes we don't have the resources, the capacity. There could be a number of reasons why we can't shift it. But what we can do is to begin to observe ourselves and pull back that power, pull back that sovereignty, take ownership of our own energy and say, oh, I can begin fixing this body, this vessel, so that I'm in alignment. And as you become more in alignment, then what happens is that those other things, without you needing to do anything to them or to the situation, it begins to fall away. So the more you get in line, the other stuff then either disappears, that toxic friend stops calling, they go away, that toxic family member just sort of goes whatever, right? So
Right.
all different examples. So with that, I think we're going to begin to wrap up. Any final parting thoughts that you have, Jessica?
I it's non-judgmental observation. That's really the best thing that I can say. And to in each moment where that voice comes in, that very familiar voice, the self-criticism voice, however that is for you, is to, you know, when you recognize that that you've jumped on that train and you're riding down that track, right? Of like, God, I'm such an idiot. Oh, I didn't do that. God, I'm a failure. Oh, I'm lazy. Whatever the case happens to be, is like just to stop, just to take a moment, take 3 deep breaths and just say, ooh, I've been down that track and I know it doesn't end well. So I'm just going to stop it here. And I'm going to say, girl, you're doing all right today. Not your finest. That's okay. Right. Like I don't need to be better tomorrow because I love myself for who I am in this moment, being the failing and or lazy and or whatever person I happen to be. It's like just that full, you know, unconditional acceptance of where I am in the moment and saying, I still love myself regardless. Okay. So let's just quiet and let's just jump off that train real quick and I'll catch the next one. So, you know, patience, lots of patience will
Well,
be
and I think
helpful.
with that as well, it goes back to like our parents, everybody, we're all doing the best that we can. So
Yep.
if you also hold that, like, it's not about the judgment about the past and what was and what I didn't do or what I could have done and the woulda, shoulda, coulda, woulda been, right? It doesn't matter, right? Because we're all in the moment until we have new knowledge. We're all doing the best we can. We're all doing whatever we can to be, to survive and hopefully to thrive and to
Mhm.
find our joy and to be there. And we don't know what we don't know until we don't know what we don't know.
Yep.
Right? And
Yeah.
our parents, when we were younger, they were doing the best they knew how, and we're going to keep improving it. So, with that said, hopefully this sparks something in you. It's given you something to consider that perhaps maybe you haven't considered before. So, next time, sit with it. See what
Yeah.
arises. See what shows up for you. So, as always, we love to sign off by saying, stay curious, keep learning, and until next time, this is Soul Talk.
Thanks for joining.
We love you.